Hey guys, Tomboy601, and today we are starting a new series. A series we are calling Best of the Line. And here's what we're doing. Let's just say my organizational method for ships has just been to mash the favorite button every time I unlock a new one. Well, now that I have 462 ships in the fleet, it's getting a little unruly as far as trying to find the ships I want. So, in this series, what we're going to be doing is talking through everything you need to know about a line to be successful in it, its quirks, its features, all that jazz, and then selecting one tech tree ship and one premium ship that will remain the favorite ships of that line. Everything else will be unfavorited, not like it's leaving the fleet, but the plan is to then shrink down and make the favorites much more manageable. Also, we may throw in an honorable mention here and there. And to kick off this series, we're going to start with the American destroyers, the American gunboats. Probably one of the first lines everyone tries out when they start out this game because, well, one, the American player base on this game is huge, and we love seeing our own stars and stripes playing any sort of game. But also, well, I think they're really, really beginner friendly. So what do you need to know about American gunboats? Well, they have fast-firing main guns with a focus on hunting destroyers and contesting the caps. They're all about playing the objective. They don't have as much of an emphasis on torpedoes. As far as consumables go with the American gunboats, you usually get two kinds of consumable. The first one is one of the big attractions, the American smokes. They last usually around the range of 2 minutes, and you usually get about 2 charges of them, which means you can spend 4 minutes and change concealed within smoke, almost a third of the match within your own floating concealment, meaning you have time to rain down fire on your enemy vessels, which is pretty great. The other thing they usually have is going to be an engine boost to try and get into the cap relatively quickly. One other notable thing about these boats is going to be their guns. Starting at tier 4 with the Farragut, they're going to get 127 millimeter guns, and they stick with that caliber of gun through the rest of the line. With this, it means you're going to be getting about 21 millimeters of pen on the HE, which is fine for shooting other destroyers. It gets a little dicey as you move up into the tiers. You're going to have to start very much focusing on the superstructure of enemy vessels in order to get damage. And with these guns, you have a very small fire chance, only around 5% throughout the entire line, which is not a ton. That means you can expect at base about 1 fire every 20 shell hits. And remember, as you move up in the tiers, the fire resistance that enemy hulls are going to have is going to increase. So you can expect that number to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. So those are the major traits of the American destroyers. Let's now talk about who you should be using to helm them. And, well, my top choice for the commander is going to be Vincent Mortiff. He is a Halloween commander that came out a couple years ago. He's available for purchase sometimes during the year. The reason why I like Mortiff is his base trait. It's going to reduce your main battery reload, which, you know, these gunboats are all about just trying to get the reload down to as low as possible. So that's kind of why I stick with him. The inspirations I like to run are Bay and Sims. Bay is going to help with concealment on all destroyers, and Sims is going to give you just that little bit extra health when you know you're going to be brawling it out inside of the caps. As far as skills I run on these commanders, I'm going to be running Observant Rage in the first slot. In the second slot, I think you could go with either Mortar or Look at Me Now, just depending on the way you're feeling that day. Then after that, you could run 1,000 Cuts for even better reload time, or Perceptive. Perceptive is going to give you that indicator to help you know where the closest enemy is currently. Then Smoke on the Water, which is going to help with an even longer smoke screen dispersion time. And then finally, the legendary skill we're going to be running is Unstoppable. This is going to allow you to continue maneuvering even when your engine is knocked out, which is very important for destroyers because Sometimes you get in too deep and you need to be able to pull back and pull out. What if you don't have Mortif? Who should you be using? Well, may I suggest good old Halsey. Halsey has all of the exact same skills pretty much. The only thing different about Halsey really in this build is going to be his base trait. His base trait buffs AP shell damage, which still isn't that bad of an inspiration. I just find myself a little more biased towards reload because that way it affects both HE and AP rounds. Seems smart. Great, so those are the commanders. What are the two boats that we are going to be keeping within our favorites? Well, the first one is going to be the Tier 5 Mayan. That's right. All the way down at Tier 5. I think the Tier 5 Mayan represents an incredible sweet spot for this line when it really has everything going for it and nothing going against it at all. At this tier, you get your 127mm guns that you're going to get for the rest of the line. Has about a 3.3 second reload, which is decent. But the key feature on Mayan that makes it stand out to me is its torpedoes. I know we haven't really talked about them much, but the added utility that Mayan gets, because it doesn't get the usual 2 racks, it gets 3 racks of torpedoes, and depending on the build, you can either stealth fire them or they match up with about your detectability. So they're finally sort of usable torpedoes from this line. Mayan is kind of that sweet spot where you're outclassing a lot of the contemporaries, and you don't really have to worry about running up against something you're not going to be equipped to handle because you have the guns that are going to carry you all the way through legendary tier while still maintaining usable torpedoes, and in fact having more torpedoes than pretty much any other ship in the line. Pretty sweet, right? So that's my tech tree pick. Mayan is going to be the top ship of the line for the tech trees, but what about the premiums? Well, it's the American destroyers. We're gonna have to have a Fletcher on here, but which Fletcher are we keeping around? Well, not actually the Fletcher, but instead the premium black. I know it was a close call with the Kid. The Kid is fantastic with its increased AA, but the black just has a special place in my heart. What are the advantages of the black? Well, there's 2 big changes from the default Fletcher that make it very much stand out. First off, you don't have that engine boost. Instead, you have yourself a radar, an incredibly useful and powerful tool, especially when you're talking about being able to contest caps, right? You know you're probably going to come up against other DDs. They're most likely going to try to pop smoke. You are able to see through that smoke and continue the engagement when they may not be able to. The other thing that black changes is its torpedoes. You have incredibly long-range torpedoes on black by default, 13.7 kilometers for the range, and then they do 21,600 damage, which is a ton. Mind you, they can be spotted from the moon, and also they are incredibly slow, but they are incredibly useful for zoning. And when you're already thinking that this line doesn't really emphasize the torpedoes, having these torpedoes that you can either A, do a drive-by with and know you're going to have the alpha to sink pretty much anything you come up against, or B, be able to zone off areas that you know are popular from a long range away. They are both useful tactics that I would prefer to use my torpedoes for when I'm in an American gunboat, rather than trying to prepare and run a proper torpedo run, if that makes sense. So, for premium ships, this is going to be the black. Now, we get on to honorable mention, which will also be remaining in the favorites fleet. There is a slight subclass of boats within the American destroyers, and that is the torpedo boats. There's 2 ships, Sommer CE and Benham. And if you're going to be using these, let's go ahead and go over the commander that you should be running if you find yourself with a Benham or Sommers, which right now is a CE version. They haven't come out with the default version, so who knows if they ever will. But if you find yourself running an American torpedo boat, who should you be running and what are the skills? Well, we're going to be running Gleaves, with Bay and Sims. Gleave's base trait is going to increase his torpedo range, and the skills we're running are Subsurface Venture, Look at Me Now, Cloak and Dagger, and Smoke on the Water, with the legendary skill, once again, of Unstoppable. And you may be saying, Tommy, why have you built Gleaves to be, yes, focused on torpedoes, but there also seems to be some hybrid skills in there? And, well, that's because the final boat we're keeping is the Sommers, because it's kind of broken in this game. Over on PC, Sommers is a tier 10, a legendary tier vessel. And when they brought it over here, they decided to not really change any of its stats, but bring it to tier 7. Yeah. Like, it's cracked. It's an American Shimakaze, essentially. 3 4-barreled 533 millimeter torpedoes with a 12.7 kilometer range and 17,900 damage. So those are pretty great. But on top of that, you have artillery, 4 2-barreled 127s with a 6.6 second reload. And, you know, think about that, where your normal American gunboat has 5 turrets. This one has 8. So you have a couple more barrels for not much more on the reload department. So you're only giving up about a third of your DPM to maintain some incredible torpedoes. So Sommers is kind of the MVP of all of the American destroyers, but I would expect that because it's completely and utterly broken. So that's it. Those are the top ships, I think, of the American destroyers. Once again, that's going to be the tier 5 Mayan, the tier 7 Black, and our honorable mention, because it doesn't really fit into the main line, but it is just so powerful, the good old Sommers. So, guys, did you like the series? If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let me know down below. Should I continue doing this with move on to the American cruisers and then battleships and then through the lines? Let me know. If you like the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. See ya.